Well, good evening, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 46. Our guest today is Erik Campbell, a good friend of mine. We're looking forward to this episode. Thanks so much for joining us. Before we start, I should say Rattle's a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995, and we just do it because we love poems and poets and putting words to our lives. And if you enjoy it in the same way that we do, please click the like button and share. Tell all your friends to subscribe. That is the only thing we ask. We don't really ask for donations, but we do ask that you share this stuff because poetry is a good thing. And now for today's warm-up poem, I just clicked the random button this week. And it came up with Brendan Constantine. And this poem, Harping by Brendan Constantine, was written for the 2018 maybe 2017 Wrightwood Arts Festival. So there's a broadside that goes with this, but I don't think you need it. Let's just give this a listen. This is Harping by Brendan Constantine to start it off. Here we go.
Harping. How have I walked so far, filled so many hats with leaves, to find a forest where no leaves fall, where each new page grows out upon the last, and the boughs lay down like the arms of cloaks in a cloakroom? The wind speaks up, loses its way, starts over. I drop my arms too and think silly thoughts about prayer. How have I slept so long that I'm this awake? I've so much reading to do, and for once I'm up to it, starting with the nearest branch. With bread and a lantern, I could read into the night. With no lantern, I could be night, dreaming aloud for each tree. When was it I decided to stay poor as a library, so I could walk like this? Where did I set my hat? The smell of mud, of books wasting in the mud, sweetens into something like straw. It's a red smell, but not urgent. Nothing's urgent here, certainly not these questions. I ask them because even the mouse has a song, and the mockingbird mocks it openly, and the river tends to digress, and hangers chime in a cloakroom. This is the sound the air makes with me.
And that was Harping by Brendan Constantine. And the woods that he's talking about are the woods that I'm living in. And believe it or not, it is actually really hot up here at 6,000 feet this week. So hopefully I got the window open. You're going to be able to hear some ambient noise, some dogs barking in the distance and cars going by, which is unusual for the Rattlecast. But I cannot... the air conditioning doesn't reach here into the office, just like the heat didn't, which is why in the winter I'm always wearing a hoodie. And I'm sweating already. So the windows are open, and it's a beautiful evening here at 6,000 feet in overlooking Los Angeles. And that was Brendan Constantine. We interviewed him in Rattle number, I don't know, was it 52 maybe? For the Los Angeles Poets issue. He's a Los Angeles poet. You can find more of his work at brendanconstantine.com. That's BrendanConstantine.com, if you could follow all that. And he's the author of about 10 books. Most recently, it was Dementia, My Darling, and Bouncy Bounce, a new chapbook that just came out last year. So check Brendan Constantine out at brendanconstantine.com. Now, as I mentioned, today's poet is a good friend of mine, and I should tell you the story. How I met Erik was just as an editor through submissions. One of the summer that I started working at Rattle, 2004, we got this thick packet from Papua, Indonesia, and a whole bunch of poems. There were 7 of them in the packet, even though we said only to send 5, but he sent 7 anyway. And we loved the whole submission so much that we took all 7 poems, if I remember right. I think, and being my first month or so on the job, I didn't realize that how unusual that was to take 7 poems all at once. But that was unusual. So, and then since then we became friends and writing friends and talking on the phone a lot. Even though he lived in Papua for a long time, moved back to the States about 10 years ago. So here's bio. Erik Campbell's poems and essays have appeared in New Letters, Tin House, Prairie Schooner, Massachusetts Review, a whole bunch of other places. His first poetry collection, Arguments for Stillness by Curbstone Press, was named by Book Sense as one of the top 10 poetry collections of 2007. Hen Press published his second, The Corpse Pose, in the spring of 2016. And his poem, Faith for My Father, circa 1980, is included in the 2019 Pushcart Prize anthology. A high school English teacher for many years. He currently lives in Nebraska. And I was looking at this book. I completely forgot this. But here's this new book, Corpse Pose. Well, new is a relative term. It's like 4 years old. But Corpse Pose. And I wrote the blurb on the back, which I completely forgot. But it really applies, especially today. This is one of the... I think I did one blurb since this blurb. I think I did a blurb for Wendy Vitalock, and then I said, I'm not going to do blurbs anymore. So this is my penultimate blurb. And I said, whenever I forget why I fell in love with poetry, I reread Erik Campbell's books. No other poet alive writes with such unerring purpose or with such consistent lyricism and wit. Like the best companions, he finds equal room for both humor and heartbreak. These are desert island poems for a world that feels increasingly like a desert island. They give the gift of knowing that we're not alone. That's what I said back in 2016 about the Corpse Pose, and it feels just as, maybe even more true now than ever. And here he is, Erik Campbell. Hello, Erik. How you doing tonight?
Hey, geez, I feel like I'm at my own funeral.
Yeah, you kind of are, maybe.
Interesting.
This is your first reading, I think you said, in years, right?
I don't remember the last one. I think maybe at least 3, possibly 4.
Yeah. Well, do you want to start us out with a poem? I have to tell everybody that I lost Erik's first book, Arguments for Stillness. You're going to hear a poem about that as our prompt poem later, because I actually felt so bad that I couldn't find this damn book that I had a dream about it. And our prompt was your most recent dream, and that was literally my most recent dream, was about losing his book. But I love Arguments for Stillness, and I love the Corpse Pose too. So what do you want to read? I have the digital version of Stillness, and I have the physical version of Corpse.
Yep, and the digital might not match the physical, but in any case, it's Winchester Mansion.
Okay, and what page is that on? I have like
It's on page 8 in my copy, but it would be maybe...
Yeah, it's like 14. Yeah, but if you say, I could find it still, so...
And this is fun, I think. In like the early 2000s, I became fascinated with the Winchester Mansion, of which I've never visited. I've never been, but I've read a lot about it. And, have you visited? You've been there, haven't you?
I actually haven't, but the funny thing is, every time we go up to Oregon to visit Megan's parents every summer, and I always want to stop there. And I guess it's because of your poem, maybe, or just there's something about that house that is really cool. So I want to, but we never somehow make it on the way. Maybe this summer will be the summer if we actually go this year. But I love. Maybe it's just from your poem, but I love I love reading about the goofy house. Yeah.
Well, not to get away. Did you go to San Simeon? Is that where you actually went, or am I thinking of somebody else in California?
Somebody else, I think.
Okay, all right. But anyway, it's fascinating. It's the Winchester Mansion because she was, I might mess this up, but she was, I believe, the granddaughter of the man who invented the Winchester rifle. Mm-hmm. And in like 1890, she was making the USD equivalent of like 30 grand a day. I mean, just insane money. So she decided to build this house, and that's enough prelude, I think. It's called Winchester Mansion. If anyone on the outside asked, they would only smile and shake their heads, silently affirming that ghosts, like sins, are a private business. And if there was no logic in the house, there was smooth certainty in the wages. We have years of better than even pay, they would say if pressed. Call it lunatic work, if you please. They had all been privy to Mrs. Winchester's genius. Those mornings she would appear with plans scribbled on paper napkins or on the back of dust jackets, last-minute revisions and decisions from a besieged architect's hand. "Can you build this?" she would ask the foreman, "because it seems impossible enough to me." But more than her money, they respected her sense of dread. The only wealthy woman they'd ever met who thought herself capable of death. The sole patron who commissioned sublime illusions of functionality and encouraged the carpenters to stop making sense. Some days she would lose herself in the house, and it was then that she was happiest, finding herself suddenly, say, on a spiral staircase leading to a ceiling. The carpenters would hear her laughter at lunchtime, the only time the building stopped, adumbrating up blind chimneys and off of trapdoors, hinting at certain sundry truths that they would later need to leave their lunches again to find. Perhaps no end is the end when building a metaphor, or there is no need for locks when all the doors lead nowhere. The foolish try to escape their sins. The wise give them rooms of their own. Yeah, and I should have mentioned, so she built, and maybe it's not implicit there, but she was so concerned with the ghosts, with the souls of the people that the rifle had murdered, so to speak, that, yeah, she thought they might come back and haunt her, and hence the Winchester Mansion, right? Where whole doors. I was thinking about the other day, I was seeing a house under construction, and you know how before they build a deck, if you have a second level deck, you just have a doorway, right, for a while that opens out into nothingness because there's no deck there yet. And that's what she did on purpose. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Just haunted.
If it's not a guided tour, you will kill yourself.
Yeah, there's actually a house right down the street. It's like that. The front door, and it's on a hill. So it's like a story and a half, like 15 feet, and there's just a door. They must go in through the garage, but every time I drive by that house, I think of the Winchester Mystery House, and that, I mean, I guess the spirits aren't getting in there.
I have a good friend, Jason. We used to live in the same neighborhood in Lincoln, Nebraska, and there's a few houses that are just astonishing. One of which is called the Ferguson House, and they open it up for ghost tours, but it's just like to get people to go through the house, make a few quid, that kind of thing. But I kind of think, like, if you own anything more than 4,000 feet, anyone should be able to just knock on your door and say, "What's up?"
And crash there for that.
Not necessarily crash there, but how'd you afford this?
Yeah,
What's with the terraces? You know.
Have you seen that what's it called? That blog that is just the what do they call it? The McMansion.com or something. That they just make fun of McMansions. It's hilarious. But yeah, I don't know what people do with those houses.
That is all of that's most of expanding Nebraska.
Is McMansions with like 8 different terraces for no reason, and like a French half and like a a Dutch half on the other side. Yeah.
And of course, there's no trees now. There will be in a couple of decades. Mm-hmm. You know, you have about 3,000 square feet, but you're a stone's throw from your neighbor. Anyway, we can talk about urban planning later.
Yeah, we can. Let's solve the planning problems at some point. But so let me ask. I never really asked the story of why the hell you're a poet. How did that happen? Was there a time in your life that you read something that spoke to you and then you wanted to speak back? Is that the story of it? Or were you always an English kind of kid? How did you become a poet?
Well, I was an English kind of kid, but only because math was considered like voodoo in my family growing up, you know. Mm-hmm. And well, no, let me geez, damn it, good question. That's like a lot of, Proust wrote 6 volumes on this very question. But I would say loneliness, because when I went to junior high, the idea was to go to where my father taught rather than the school that I was supposed to be assigned to. And I had already had my locker assigned and everything at the other school, but I went to a different school that my dad taught at. So I knew no one. I knew no one at all. And so I was too scared to eat lunch, for example, and I made an arrangement with the librarian, like, can I hang out here during lunch? And I think they thought I was so pathetic, they just let me do it. I would literally get my tray and then go to the library. I mean, it was the weirdest thing. And then I discovered, like, you know, the early pulp people like Edgar Rice Burroughs and Tarzan. And then the biggest, the most important aspect of, like, just discovering, like, interiority was discovering old time radio tapes in that same library, because I would have to be there in the morning because my father would get there early and I had to ride with him. So I was in that library for about an hour before the sun came up every day through my junior high years. And I discovered a drawer that no one cared about anymore, full of audio cassettes. It was like The Shadow and all these things. So it wasn't like, I'd love to say it was Shakespeare, like Hamlet opened up my brain. Not that'd be pompous bullshit and it wouldn't be true. It was like Orson Welles and Jack Benny, where you could be directly communicated to with no distractions. Because I'd be in the dark, you know, wearing those 80s headsets that were so huge. Well, kind of like the ones you have now. Mm-hmm. What's old is new again. But so that happened. And then the only thing that I was even remotely good at was a facility with language and such. But I don't even think that was any more profound than my peers. Mm-hmm. I think it was actually then, okay, so piggybacking off of all that, it was being in high school and reading John Keats and learning about the Romantic poets for the first time, because I just thought they were absolute rock stars. I mean, I was thinking about this today in the shower, trying to presuppose what questions you would ask me and I would answer poorly. And I kind of touched upon this one, but I thought, I remember being in 11th and 12th grade, and my thought process, my mind, in my mind, I thought, why wouldn't anybody want to be like Edgar Allan Poe? Like, you're crazy if you don't want to get to this level. This is so interesting, right? Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't anybody try to be like John Keats if they could? You know, if they had the inclination or something. I mean, again, that's crazy, because now I think, like, it'd be really great to be Christopher Hitchens or Feynman or, mm-hmm. you know, whoever. But I guess, yeah, inability to do anything else, something that speaks to you, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh. Well, it was funny you mentioned the library for lunchtime, because I did the same thing. I think Megan did the same thing too. Maybe poets are just people who hated the cafeteria and went to the library instead. Is that maybe a show of hands on our
God, I'd love to see that.
On our live stream? Yeah. Did everybody go to the library in high school instead of trying to find the cool table in the cafeteria? Because that is what I did. I spent a lot of time in the library myself. And it was just more interesting than what was going on in the cafeteria. I mean, that's just all there is to it, you know.
Well, you know, to add a caveat to the sadness of this, so we should probably, I know we're supposed to read things, but I also think I felt so badly about not sitting with other people. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand the lunchroom, right? I still don't understand. I thought, okay, well, I know these folks. They're in my theater class. I know them. Where am I going to sit? This is weird. Uh-huh. So instead, I chose not to sit.
Yeah, that was exactly, like, I didn't know where to sit. Like, I was, there was the jocks, because I did a lot of sports, but I felt weird there. The conversation wasn't anything I was interested in. And then there was, like, the nerd table.
Locker room, and you're like, oh, wait.
Yeah, exactly.
I like sports. I don't really like misogyny.
Exactly.
That's where I tap out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was it. And then I just found some poems. Chad Kristen said "Smoking in the Parking Lot." Yeah, there's probably some of that too.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
And you know, the thing is too, I mean, I'll go back to David Foster Wallace also in terms of the reason for it, to make you feel less alone. I mean, not to get heavy, but for Christ's sake, like especially given today when we, I said to my little brother, and he said I should repeat this, that now that we're all disembodied, we're kind of tired of the bullshit. I love the idea that no one cares about the Kardashians right now, or right?
Yeah, that's true. I haven't heard anybody say. I haven't heard the word Kardashian in so long. It's beautiful.
Isn't it beautiful?
It kind of is. Yeah, actually.
It really so is. And this is arguably one of the worst times in the 21st century. Well, it's got to be the worst time in the 21st century. But
well, 9/11. You know, I mean, we have some bad times in this century.
I guess I'm thinking that wasn't completely global.
Yeah, yeah.
Because now the COVID's hitting tribal communities.
Mm-hmm.
When that happens, it's done.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
That's true. Yeah.
So that terrifies me to no end. But I think that now we're starting, and I think that's what poetry does. Again, not to get so highfalutin, but the thing is, what is it? I don't even know what it is. I can't tell people what it is. If you were to say to me, define it, I would say, okay, it's a lyrical expression of a essentially a noun, a person, place, or a thing, right? And that's about as good as I can do. And for all these bullshit professors trying to taxonomize things, that's as best as they can do too, because you have short stories and you have novels and poetry somewhere in there, but it's got a more focused agenda because you don't have 600 pages, right? Wow, I really veered off your question.
No, it's good. I'm always wondering, like, I just don't understand why we spend the time doing what we do when so few people care about it.
Okay, there you go.
I mean, and so I always want to know, like, why do you do this? Why do I do this? Why do the 50 people watching across the 3 platforms or 75 people, why are they watching this? Why do they care what Erik Campbell has to say in his lyrical expression? You know, I don't really understand it. Although, but I feel there's a thrill to it. There's a thrill to hearing some kind of truth, I think, and that's all that it comes down to for me.
Yeah, or like at least an attempt at truth.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
an attempt at like radical honesty or something like that.
right.
You
There
know?
you go. Like Gregory Corso, who I'm not a huge fan of, but you know he's a badass. He once said, "Poetry is the opposite of hypocrisy." Now that's not true when you're young and you're starting off, because really what you want to be is poignant, because you confuse things, and you're too young to have had enough life experience. So you try to, as Fitzgerald said, you try to plagiarize other people's emotions, right? Which is why, you know, like any teacher worth his or her salt or their salt in a poetry class, I think they do the right thing by saying you can't write about death. Like, death is off the table until next semester, you know? Unless it's like the death of your hamster, something that, you know, you have to make the strange or the familiar very strange, you know? Because that's not honesty. That's you trying to prove that you have a soul and that you can render it for public consumption, right? But that's also what being alive is. So it takes so long, I think, to realize when you can be of use to someone else as a writer, to not be full of garbage, to not be full of shit. It takes so long to not be full of shit. I mean, I wasn't not full of shit until 25.
Yeah.
For real. I mean, for real. I was trying to imitate other people. I was thinking about the market. I was thinking about what kinds of things work, you know, like for others. I didn't have I mean, if it were a conversation, it would have been the most insincere conversation ever, until I got over that and realized and I think everybody, they should write stuff that they themselves want to read, that makes them feel less alone, and to affirm the ephemeral quality of the human condition.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think that's a good definition. Let's read some more poems before people say where are the poems. Yeah. Where do you want to go?
Let's skip that. Let's do After Candlelight.
Is that in arguments?
Yep.
And which page roughly? I'll find it. I find it. Okay, 53. I got it.
It should be the
I got
70s. Okay. All right. So, okay, this is After Candlelight. It says after Billy Collins, but it's not actually after Billy Collins. Sandy Taylor, the publisher, said I should add that because it was so similar to something that he published, I think, before me. So that's disingenuous. That's lying right there.
Yeah, there you
right?
go. Yeah, so you ruined poetry.
Yeah. I should hold it like Trump does, a book, so it's such a lie.
What is this thing? Yeah.
Anyway, I'm always fascinated by when the power goes out. Oh wow! Can you hear those kids in the background?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of cool to have
you like that?
A place with kids, but probably shut the door if you can, if it doesn't get too hot. I was wondering. I thought it was the ghosts of the Winchester house haunting your apartment.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if people get home. I have these like cool headphones that are sensitive, but hopefully
that's amazing.
It's much better now.
I can still sort of hear them.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad they're having fun and
they're having a ball.
Yeah.
I should invite them in and let them know what a good time they're missing.
You should.
Right here.
You should.
Okay, so I've always been a fan when the power goes out because when I was a kid, it was the only time that the family got together in the basement for nothing, for no reason, with nothing prepared. And if you live in the Midwest, you're used to tornadoes and all of that. So everybody has a basement in the Midwest. And so that's what this is about. And thinking about Thoreau. So it's called After Candlelight, 2:30 a.m. It would have shocked Thoreau to see us earlier, candlelit, choosing to save the bottle of wine for a night somehow more congruent than this. He'd have felt disconcerting waves of valuation, watching us go through our taxes by tapers at the kitchen table. He could have guessed that instead of making love, our modern sensibilities would find sense in taking this moment to confront inertia, the taxes, letters unwritten and unanswered, the forgotten contents from the clutter drawer, all our mortal obligations exposed on the table, fanned about us like magazines of the flickering semicircle of a life under interrogation. It would have saddened him to see me forget and keep trying the lights as I moved from room to room. My fingers, like so much of me now, an extension of choreographed expectation, resistant to the slightest violation. But by midnight, the power still out, he might have been pleased to see me on the sofa, reading by candlelight, a book written by a dead man who never knew electricity, but had his moments of lightning. I like to think that Thoreau would have seen something he recognized in my wife sleeping upstairs, her window open to cricket bows, or in my face when at 12:15 a.m. I rose as the radio resumed its song mid-chorus, and I squinted through this sudden world, small with light, knocking over candles and wondering, who needed this music? What fool left all the lights on?
It's funny that you do that poem today, because last night, I always take my dog for a walk late at night through the town in the woods. And last night we had a planned power outage because they had to replace a transformer or something. And there's only one line up the mountain. And so I was walking. I planned it this way, but I was walking when the power outage happened. So I watched the whole town. Yeah. So I got to watch the whole town go clump, 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 like someone turning off the lights at night.
Wow.
And then the stars were just like whoosh. And I thought that I would have like a good night's sleep because I would go home, after taking the dog for a walk, and the power would still be out. So we were on our walk, and almost at home, it goes clink, 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 and all the lights go back on. And I was so disappointed. It was so nice having just the starlight was just amazing.
Yeah.
So there's something about that, and the silence too, like no compressors humming, no computers whirring.
I tell you, that's the strangest thing. I mean, I used to go jogging in Papua at night, and I would stick to the main roads because you can't go through the jungle because that's madness because you get killed by snakes, right?
Yeah.
But the power went out one night when I was jogging, and this is back in the day when I used to jog about 4 miles a week, so nothing crazy, but kind of around the compound and back home. And so the power went out, and I thought, whoa, okay. I mean, because we're talking absolute darkness. The only ambient light is from the mining camp, right? That's it. Like, most people have never seen darkness.
Mm-hmm.
They've really never seen it because there's always ambient light from a city. I mean, like, rural people have seen it. People, who have gone to isolated places, but by and large, you don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally hand in front of your face dark. And so I thought the only thing I can do is go like just sit down and wait for a car to come by because they have headlights.
Oh, wow.
And so I did. Yet the car was Compasa, which is like the military police, and they're pretty awful people. And there was a boa constrictor over the road. Might have been 11 feet.
Oh, wow.
Right? 11 feet long. But just before I was, 11 feet up and 11 feet in length, but a few yards in front of me. So they knew I needed help, and then they proceeded to run over the boa constrictor back and forth just to kill it.
Oh, wow. Jesus.
And they're big, and it was like writhing in pain.
Oh,
and
man.
I thought, oh my God. And then the next day I helped draft the memo saying, Indonesian employees, you don't have to kill every snake. You don't have to kill them all.
Uh-huh.
Although, we fear snakes. But anyway, that feeling, that elemental weirdness, right?
Yeah, I still remember some story. I think you were talking about the first day that you were in Papua, and you went to a bathroom, and you closed the door in the stall, and there was a spider the size of a dinner plate staring at you. Every time I go into a bathroom stall in the woods, I think of that story.
Yeah.
So how did you come to be in Papua, and let me ask, like, what did you learn there? Just for people who, you have that essay that we published. What was it, like, on not writing in the jungle? I think it was called, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what did you take away from your time? It seemed like you sort of, in a weird way, fit more in the jungle in the middle of nowhere with very little access to technology than you do here on Skype.
Yeah, I tell you, that's true. Yeah, unfortunately, maybe lamentably true. I don't know. I kind of have a pet theory that since everyone's life is finite, we got about, what do men clock in at, 82 years at the outside now, and women live longer, of course, because they're not as reckless and stupid as we are.
Well, it's the testosterone, actually, but yeah.
Okay, let's go with testosterone.
Yeah, it's toxic. It's toxic. So we're filled with a toxic masculinity. But anyway.
Yes, it's actually chemically true.
It is chemically true. It is.
Oh, that's hilarious. There's an idea right there.
Yeah. It takes 4 years off our lives, something like that.
Yeah, so I went there because my wife was, my ex-wife was an impressive person, and she got a job at a mining company in the middle of the jungle in Papua. And I was in the midst of a great job that I loved. I was working living in Bethesda. Living in Tacoma Park in Maryland, and loving it. But yet the opportunity to go there was too crazy to pass up. You kind of have to do it. So we moved there on like a 1 or 2 year contract, and then it just kept getting extended. So essentially 1 year became 5. And then I just became completely ensconced because, the series of African migrations and the time that they left. And from the Eastern African migrations, I think it was number 2 or maybe it's number 1. I mean, went to Papua. Mm-hmm. I mean, there have been people there for 70-some thousand years, And for, a U.S. perspective, we've had people, we think, for 15,000 years. right? But that's still being backdated all the time. But we know that that's one of the earliest places. And so it was just so fascinating, and being so completely otherized was such an amazing experience. I mean, it wasn't easy, right? I mean, culture shock is real. You spend about a month losing your mind. I mean, I didn't see a proper movie. There was nowhere to go. I mean, every day you would wake up and you're in the jungle, man. You're in the jungle. And you hang out with Seventh-day Adventists from some remote island in Indonesia. I mean, Indonesia is huge, and it's actually quite pluralistic, even though it's the most populous Muslim country in the world. Again, you've got a lot of Christians there. Most Papuans are Christians. So I would have to attend, say, pig roasting ceremonies, which is what the Papuans love doing, in the presence of 30 Muslims who do not like this at all, right? I mean, needless to say. And you're like, wow, the cultural overlap. And I mean, it's just mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. As you know now, Flores man, we now know that there was a Homo sapien who was about 3.5 feet tall. Mm-hmm. And he was found now in the Flores, right? Which is right there in the Papuan area. And I I've been to. So, yeah, I mean, having grown up in Nebraska, where, Minnesota seems exotic, right? Colorado, California is a different country if you're born in Omaha, mm-hmm. So, yeah, it was absolutely fascinating.
Do you have any poems about it that you can share? Any be good?
Let's jump to the long one, because we're already going probably over time.
Yeah, whatever. I don't care anymore.
You keep forgetting we're not just having a conversation. So
yeah, I keep forgetting too. So is it from the Corpse Pose you want to do?
Yep, let's do that.
Okay.
Let's do that.
So what page with that?
Let's do page 20.
Okay.
And this is kind of the point, actually. So this is nice. This is called Like a Bavarian Cafe in a Mall in Jakarta. Mid-December, and the mall is full of Muslims in Santa suits with blackened Peters waving switches and sacks, which causes both of us to marvel at how adroitly we colluded with the Dutch, imported the secular like spices or slaves. Jesus, I say, just look at the faux snow for proof, or SpongeBob there dancing for Javanese applause. And we're in a mall because everyone is, because Jakarta is a city of interiors and crowds, because crowds in this century create interiority. And though we are where we are, I still say, here we are, imagine. And she nods at this, since we've been married 13 years, and so have learned when to indulge or ignore each other's obviousness. We could eat schnitzel tonight, but we can't find it silly. And I know that later all of this must be analogy. Someone said that when the natural becomes mechanical, we laugh. My research suggests that when the opposite happens, we laugh even harder and then we shake our heads.
That was like a Bavarian cafe in a mall in Jakarta from the Corpse Pose. Why don't you, since we haven't been getting to the poems, why don't you read 2 more? And I should say to everybody watching at home, if you have any questions for Erik, let me know in the chat windows. I'm monitoring Facebook and YouTube. So if you have any questions, I'll pass them along. But in the meantime, why don't you read 2 more poems, and then we'll go back to chatting.
I'm going to read a long one, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Read whatever you want.
I mean, it's not long on I mean, it's not the Columbiad or some nonsense, but it's the longest thing I've ever done. And it's the entirety of part 2 of the Corpse Pose.
Okay, what page?
It's page 39.
Okay.
And it's something of a disjunctive poem, hugely influenced by Dean Young. And it's called A Partial Summary, 2002 to 2007. And it's partial because it's incomplete, and partial because it's biased, of course, because I'm a Westerner someplace else. And the quotation at the beginning, the Dean Young quotation, ties in. So I'll read that too. So it's a partial summary, 2002 to 2007. You bend the nail, but keep hammering, because hammering makes the world. And that's Dean Young. To my mind, it's wise to take only what you can carry, whether you're traveling to your kitchen or Komodo Island, and unless you possess a refined sense of inevitability or silly, never ask for directions in India, because Indians are mostly Hindu, and so for some 70% of them, life is a circle. Ergo, they will pick any spot on said circle. Certainly you will arrive somewhere, and you will. Fill your head with too much Buddha, and for weeks you might not be able to leave the bedroom. If you live in the jungle where there's little to do save for reading and walking, you might wind up watching all 4 seasons of the OC on pirated DVD and wish you hadn't sympathized with the characters and later had to hate them, then yourself. One can read 1 literary biography and 1 book of new criticism simultaneously and receive blinding headaches. Yesterday, my Javanese neighbors placed dozens of eggshells on bushes in front of their house. I suspect them of mysticism and things Southeast Asian. They suspect me of drinking, invasion, good teeth, and too much television. My wife wonders what they did with all that yolk if we missed 1 epic omelet. Say you find yourself near Libya in an oasis town called Siwa, and a Siwan tells you that Gore lost the election because he is a Jew. Try not to kill yourself. Concede that politics is off the table. Feel blessed your beer isn't. If you believe in a personal God, I suspect you could walk straight into the jungle barefoot, but I can't. Observation taught me that the most powerful God in Southeast Asia, if iconography indicates anything, is Bob Marley. You will never see a reality show entitled The Exceedingly Cordial Chef because politeness adds 10 pounds to TV personalities, whereas anger is slimming. You will never see a reality show. A wise man once said, no olives, no Athens. When Alexander came to Egypt, he brought hundreds of soldiers to ensure that various oracles found a pharaoh in him. They did. Now this is called foreign policy. In New Zealand, there is 1 murderer, universal health care, and people discussing good books on the radio. In Asia, Colonel Sanders looks like Ho Chi Minh, and this is like a Bavarian cafe in a mall in Jakarta. If you choose to be Canadian while traveling, study a map of Canada first, just in case you meet a man from Nairobi who used to live in Canada because he had to, because his family was burned, and wants to discuss Montreal restaurants with precision. A wise man's barber once said, no Athens, no Oedipus. If you are Canadian or feigning Canadianness in Egypt, you will doubtless hear this, Canada Dry, big country, small bottle, which suggests that people aren't funny everywhere, and you might consider buying a map of Atlantis. In Lamu, Kenya, there are still prophets screaming in the street. I watched one busily being ignored because little has changed since the Book of P. In Bali, everyone can play guitar and sing Hotel California phonetically, but always in key. I have several Australian friends who are either abbreviating or renaming every noun in the lexicon because they want to force the cosmos into a condition conducive to a good barbecue. And let's face it, mate, there are worse things that people can do. In a hotel lobby in Perth, I noticed that someone hung a copy of Kandinsky's The Kiss sideways. I mentioned this to the concierge, and he told me that the manager liked it better that way. And what's more, the artist is Klimt. And I had to admit that some things are improved if sideways, e.g. dead bodies, certain species of tree. My wife's theory is that people who grow up with 4 seasons understand birth and decay more tenderly. To which I say I had aspirations to write my biography as told to Malcolm X, but it's too late for that as well. You will never find a car large enough on which to emblazon your philosophy in bumper stickers, and one can find fault and fallacy in any statement under 7 words. In Papua, there are rainbows almost every night around 6, but don't let this give you any ideas. If you mull over the data, you'll find that from 2000-2008 CE, the White House had difficulty with, then during commercial break, abolished all subject-verb agreement, and thus things just happened on a regular basis, principally in places where people pray 5 times a day. But the White House has never had any trouble with metonymy. Everyone, not only the doctors, should take the Hippocratic Oath. Expulsion from a particular woman's womb in a certain century and country should not be confused with greatness when it's chance and Magellan and sometimes gunpowder. Everyone's birth certificate should read just below the name, restrictions may apply. It's too easy to fly over Sudan. Wandering in the desert doesn't guarantee a promised land. You can lead a horse to water, you can make it drink itself to death. Carelessness can create an attitude of your longitude. You are an unfortunate superhero if all of your battles are with existential threats. You can see your neighbors at night, eating dinner, backlit and happy, almost ekphrastic, and every house you've ever lived in or seen from the street is full of bent nails that keep the shaky thing standing.
Excellent. Long
workout
poem from the corpse. Yeah, from the corpse pose. So many lines I love in that, but that everyone should take the Hippocratic Oath. That's the one that I always think about when I read that one.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Someone was asking on the chat. Let me see. Mission Junior High. Did you go to Mission Junior High?
Yeah.
You did, yeah. And
oh boy,
I don't know. I think of a classmate here. I can't find the other comment, but someone was asking if they knew you. It is a small world, the poetry world.
Yeah, probably.
Now, there's one thing I've always kind of wondered, and it's extremely personal, and so I figured, why not ask you this now when it's a live broadcast in front of lots of people. Now, it seems to me, I always read your poems as if you were writing to Sherry. I don't know if that's the case or not, but there are a lot of poems that are explicitly written to Sherry. Your ex-wife that you mentioned was a what did you say? It was a
that is pretty heavy.
It is, yeah. So now that you're divorced, do you find it? Yeah, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. But now that you're divorced, and most of the poems, and I feel free to bring it up because most of the poems in the corpse pose are about that, or toward the end.
Well, you've met.
Yeah. Do you find it like? I've always thought like one of the pieces of advice I give to people is that you should write a poem as if you're writing to someone specific and like know who you're writing to, and that's how you make it intimate. And that's kind of why your poems always feel so intimate, because it feels like you're writing to her, I think. Do you have trouble writing now that you've been divorced, and or do you still do that, or did you not do that at all? Like how does that work for you? Did you find someone new to write to?
I can tell you this, and I don't mean to dodge. This is not a dodge.
Uh-huh.
But, well, no, it might even inform the discussion. It's a lot easier to have a muse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just a lot more fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even think, I'm not using muse in the Homeric sense, but even having someone you want to impress is muse-like, right?
Yeah.
And so, she was a very careful, conscientious reader and indulged me to the hilt. I mean, it's really quite phenomenal how much of my stuff she read, 2/4 or 2/3 rather of the corpse pose. And so, that's part of the, you're right. I mean, you're probably absolutely right, because without a muse in the most general definition, and I mean, a muse could even be like your peer group or your writing group. I don't have any of that any longer, and not really. And so I have felt less inclined to communicate in that way. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's huge. I mean, Yeats, man, that was his whole thing.
It was, yeah.
I mean, among school children is one of the greatest things ever written, in my opinion, and is the reason that, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, among children, so many of Yeats's poems are almost like short stories or novels in their import and their heft. I mean, they're just so huge, like some Philip Larkin poems are, you know. To use a more contemporary example, but his whole thing was Ava Braun, right?
Yeah.
And you look at, wait, did I get that right? Not Ava Braun.
Oh,
sorry, Fanny Braun.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
Is that right?
I don't know.
Who's his lover?
I don't remember.
I'm screwing this up. Someone's got to Google that.
Someone will Google it. You know, there'll be a comment or something. My brain does not hold facts, so they just don't exist.
Ava Braun was the Argentinian.
Ava Braun was Hitler's muse.
Ava Braun was Hitler's muse.
and Hitler's, you know, she did the, you know, that, what was that? The documentary, the Olympics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What was that? Triumph?
Yeah, Triumph of the Will. Yeah.
So anyway, muse is important. I don't know, just to have a reason, I suppose. We've talked about this. I mean, you haven't published a book. You haven't written anything, have you, for a long time?
I write, when we had a reading series live, I would write a poem once a month to read at the reading series open mic. And now I write a poem once a week for the prompt that we do. And I'm trying to get back into the swing. For me, it's more about just priorities and sort of disillusionment, I guess. You know, I published a book and it didn't feel as cool as I thought it would or something. Yeah. I just didn't care. And then lack of caring, then I had kids right after I published a book. So I have two kids. They just turned 10 and 6. And like they're my poems now or something. And I mean, I don't want to sound cheesy or something, but it just seems I just don't care enough to actually take the time to do it. I'd rather play Catan with them or something than write a poem. And so I'm kind of stuck in this rut where I just don't care enough to do it. And you haven't done readings in years, and you don't.
Malaise. Yeah. I think it's also the digital culture. I mean, really, once 2007 happened, it seemed to me as though there was just a sea change, just some kind of seismic shift. Once Facebook was open to people who weren't in university, and once the smartphone was introduced, I believe that was 2007 for both things.
I think it was, yeah.
Then it just became weird. I mean, we've talked about this before here and there, but you know, in my day, like wanting to be a short story writer or a poet was kind of the same thing, although the short story writers had aspirations to write novels, usually, they usually have that aspiration. But the paradigm was not unlike a punk band or just a rock band. You play at small clubs, you put your chops together, maybe you put out an EP or something until you have enough commercial viability or at least a fan base that someone will bother to put out an album, right? And in the poetry metaphor, it's, you know, that's what you used to do. You'd submit to the magazines that you read and respected, and you had to have an acknowledgments page that was pretty substantial before any publisher would look at you at all, unless they, you know, otherwise, unless you were really well connected. And I've never been connected. I mean, when you and I met in 2004, it's not like Rattle is what it is now, right? I mean, it was one of many of those magazines, right? They were all jockeying, but it was a really robust world. And then it just suddenly disappeared. And so, I mean, now I know people who publish books without even publishing in magazines. And I don't even really understand what that means. I don't know what I don't know. And I also see there's so much less gravitas on things. I mean, I think we talked about this when we had our tech run. I mean, I used to look forward to, well, I mean, I still do. I don't know how many people actually look forward to author X putting out something. And then they buy it immediately. I just think maybe that ship has sailed. that whole delivery system might be done. In the same way that music has changed. I mean, once music stopped being a commodity, an actual physical product, right? I mean, not a commodity, but a physical product, a CD or an album. It's emotional, aesthetic, and intellectual heft was just, lightened. I mean, how many people do you know who listen to an album beginning to end?
Yeah, I mean, that we romanticize the records, and some people still do, and I guess record shops are having some kind of anachronistic rebound.
Yeah.
Now, but it's a minority of people for sure. I mean, everybody's just gets the Spotify or whatever.
Right, Spotify. And I'm not rattling my cane here. I mean, I realize things change, and that's just that's just the gravitation of human history and technology and all of that. But we're screwing ourselves over. I mean, I see amazing things happening in media. In television media, like The Watchmen, and certain shows that are just astonishing. But I think maybe the proof is in the pudding. I mean, I don't know, under these quarantine conditions and the pandemic, I don't know, are a lot more people reading? And if they are, that's good. And if they're not, that's okay too. Maybe the utility of such things has it's not been able to make a good argument, perhaps.
Well, to me, I think the intimacy of poetry. Maud Gunn was Yeats's
view.
Oh yeah. Let me correct the record. So everybody's been.
Ava Braun, of course, was Hitler's mistress.
Yeah, Ava Braun was Hitler's mistress, and Leni Riefenstahl did Triumph of the Will. So we have a lot of corrections to do. Everybody's been fixing us.
They're freaking out. That's hilarious.
They're all correcting us. So Paul Scott Stanfield says Leni Riefenstahl did Triumph of the Will, and then David Leo Siroy says Maud Gonne, and Josh Williams says Fanny Braun. So we are completely corrected, but now the audio version where people can't see comments is corrected too.
Well, Paul Scott Stanfield is one of the preeminent Yeats scholars in the United States.
Oh, yeah?
So his brain, he was probably, it would be like if I said, I don't know, if I said John Keats wrote Ozymandias. That's how.
That's the level. Yeah.
Probably went up.
Yeah.
I mean,
but to get back to the point, though, I think poetry is the most intimate art form there is, and the most intimate medium there is. I think we're all craving intimacy because when you read a poem, it is you as the reader sort of being the musical instrument of the author. Like your breath is regulated by the author's words on the page. Your heartbeat is regulated by the beat of the poem as it's going through. Like you are the medium, and it's this one-on-one connection, which is why I love poetry so much. And it's the thing that we're longing for these days. We don't have this intimacy anymore. So why is it that no one reads?
Okay, I think we're afraid of certain aspects of it, right? Because, or we're afraid of connection on a few fundamental levels. Like I gotta tell you, I mean, the aforementioned divorce, right, was the first time I went to therapy. And I think if you're doing therapy well, you have to spend the first few sessions just like crying, like, oh my God, coming to terms with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, because we lie to ourselves all the time, and we lie to each other all the time. And I think people are, understandably so, very often concerned or worried about intimate communication.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's threatening.
Yeah.
It's even it's because again, it should be bereft of bullshit. And so someone's trying to speak to you crucially, right? They're not speaking to you flippantly. They're speaking to you crucially. They're trying to do that. And that already is a little bit embarrassing. you know? I mean, Jesus, I mean, it's embarrassing to even sit at your typewriter or your computer and think, I'm going to create something that didn't have to exist because I think I have something to say. Right there, bam. That's not being an actor where you're aping somebody else's script, right? You're taking a huge risk of vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
And that's just on the writing end. So on the receiving end, I think that's the stuff that works the best, actually, right? But again, I think people are maybe a little bit worried about it because it's uncomfortable, although it's not difficult. That's another thing that drives me to distraction is, and I think this is almost entirely high school teachers' faults because they tend to teach poetry like you need a secret decoder ring. And they bust out William Cullen Bryant's, what is that one? Battered my heart, 3-person God or something. Okay, but if you weren't raised in the Trinity or the Trinitarian tradition, you don't know what the hell's happening in this poem. You need a secret decoder ring. Or for that matter, the Wasteland. Let's face it, right? Everybody loves proof rock. But if you're not college educated, forget it about the Wasteland. You're not going to get there unless you have to have a companion book, right? There's no other way to do it. Or like Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, right? Which I forget who said it, but when that was published, one of his peers, might have been Samuel Beckett, said, you have abandoned your audience. Right. Well, abandoned the common man, I think is what the line was. But I don't think most poets are trying to do that any more than most short story writers are. They're trying again to speak crucially and to dignify and even sometimes complicate the human experience. I mean, which is another problem. It shouldn't necessarily make you feel great, right? That's what Instagram poetry is for.
Yeah.
If you want to feel wonderful, do that. But
yeah, I've always feel like poetry, like real poetry, because it's honest and intimate in that way, creates cognitive dissonance, and that's what people sort of resist. It's like my worldview is changing, and I don't like this experience, and so that's why people don't gravitate toward it. But then some people enjoy that, like people enjoy skydiving or something for the rush of the cognitive dissonance. I think that's kind of what it comes down to, and I don't know how to. I want to find a way to make more people appreciate that and appreciate the way that expands your consciousness to have somebody's voice be your voice, which is, I guess, fundamentally what poetry is. Like you're allowing yourself to be embodied briefly, and and then
I think if we could sell it that way, so to speak, it would be better. Because I agree with you completely. I mean, the moment you sit down with anyone, let's just say a novel, the moment you sit down with James Baldwin and Giovanni's Room, that mere act that you're surrendering yourself to one person's voice is already an act in the dissolution of your own ego. But of course, you have to bring your intelligence to the table to apprehend the author, right? And it's such an amazing sense of commerce between thoughts and ideas, but we live in a frenetic world where, I don't know about you, but I can't go out in public without, if anyone is idle in public, they're looking at their phone. And I don't think they're looking at Kindle or whatever, some book. I don't know how to make it, I don't know. At the same time, though, concurrently, we have so many people interested in New Age and yoga. I mean, namaste is almost like saying hello in California. And yet, I don't know, these people, if you said, hey, how about you sit down and read a whole bunch of Basho right now, or a whole bunch of Issa haikus, read Busan. I don't know if I mean, maybe they would, and if they would, they'd probably love it. But yeah, I don't know how we can save it. I don't know how we can do that.
Yeah, I don't know how either.
I don't think slam worked, for example. Do you think? I mean, it kind of enlivened the youth.
Well, I think slam is a different genre in the same way Instagram is a different genre, because with poetry it's about this intimacy. With page poetry, it's just you and the author, and the author inhabiting your body, so you get to experience that thing. With slam, it's like a religious revival or a concert or a rock concert where everyone's feeling the same thing. So it's a collective energy with slam. And I love it too. I loved our slam issue, and I love watching slam poets, but it's not poetry in the way that people are frightened of, I guess. Like I think people want to belong to a collective. I think we have this sort of tribal drive, and slam caters to that in a way, because we all, we get to have the same thought pattern for a while. In the same way, if we're listening to a rock concert or any concert, we're all feeling the same music. And that's what slam does. And what poetry does is slice into the complicated ways that we see the world. And I think they're completely different things, even though they both use language as the tool. So I don't think slam is the answer to the kind of poetry that we try to publish, as much as I appreciate slam. And I appreciate Instagram too. I appreciate anybody who's using words in a creative way, but it's a different genre completely. And I think slam is the same way. Performance poetry is the same way to me.
Yeah. Well, I do appreciate slam. It's taken me a while. I don't appreciate Instagram poetry.
Yeah. Well, I remember when you hated slam.
Yeah.
And so maybe you'll come around. Instagram poetry has a use, which is, I think in our interview with Pavana Reddy, she talked about it pretty openly. But the use is to sort of send covert messages to people. Yeah. And it really works well for that, in the same way like greeting cards do, except a little more sly, and more cleverly. But
she's remarkably honest.
Yeah,
and she's really good at what she does.
Yeah.
But again, that kind of goes back to the point. Do you remember part of that interview? I think it was toward the end. Is that Pavana? Is that right?
Pavana, yeah, Pavana. I think. Mm-hmm.
She said that what she really wanted was to like be in a august publication, right? She wanted,
yeah.
And
I'm thinking, like, why? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
weird.
Yeah. But it was an insightful comment, because there's something about expanding human consciousness that everybody aspires to, or something, or at least every writer aspires to. Like, you want to change the world with what you write. That's what everybody actually wants to do, and it's really hard, and nobody does it. But occasionally someone does, and that's what we're all trying to do, I think, is to make the world a better place somehow, because it's more expansive and open and sees the world and our interactions more clearly.
Well, it's just a shame that she couldn't realize that. I mean, my God, when's the last time you and I got a phone call from Anushka Shankar? I'd love to put some of your words to music. Mm-hmm. I mean, in terms of touching people, I mean, and sharing, she's already eclipsed almost every page poet there is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah,
that's hyperbole, but a lot of them. So it's funny.
Well, we're kind of over time, but let's do 2 more poems. We haven't done enough poems. So why don't you pick 2 to close it out?
All righty. Okay, and they're going to be short ones.
Sure. Let me know the pages.
Yeah. Let's go with page 58. This one's called Errands. The early childhood nostalgia archive rejected my Stretch Armstrong because he looked like, quote, a sad plastic vestige, and a long neglected god. Too much specificity, I shouted silently and left. The next stop was the inconvenience store, just to see what was new. The building was slanted, the shelves were now taller and required wobbly ladders. The clerks couldn't give change, and they still haven't your brand of anything. I checked. I called the latter 20th century helpline, waited 14 years and 3 months, and their message was, "We're sorry, our organization is strictly ironic. If you need help, please pound sand and try again." This is a recording. The last stop was the car wash. My car was already clean, but I wanted to pretend I was running through a sprinkler in the backyard on a puddle, wonderful June afternoon and try not to feel so much like a vegan deer hunter. Later that evening, before unlocking the front door, I shot a smile and a thumbs up at the sky because I knew Google was watching me and remembered that Zeus used to be.
Yeah, I laugh at that Google every time too.
Okay, so we're out of here in just a second. Right? Okay, so we'll finish up with, you know what? Let's do the last poem.
Okay.
It's page 93. So there's a section that deals with the Village Green Preservation Society, which is my favorite album by the Kinks. And it's essentially a group of curmudgeon-y people who are lamenting the state of affairs.
Let me ask you about this Village Green Preservation Society, because I know the first time you sent me one of those poems, you mentioned it was a Kinks album. But why is it? Is there actually something like that? Did they just make it up? What is the deal with a Village Green?
It was like this concept album that it was the Kinks' way of trying to encapsulate the end of like 19th century Britain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the song says, "God bless Tudor houses," you know, antique tables and billiards, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just thought it would be hilarious, like if you could conjure up the Village Green Preservation Society, like all these people who've lived in a certain village in London and or outside of London, and they see the whole, you know, urban sprawl, and they're like, you know what? Now we can't play cricket. This sucks, right? So that's kind of the idea. Is that good?
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
All right. So this is called the Village Green Preservation Society Considers How the Cartographers Conspired. And it begins with a quotation from William Manchester from his book, A World Lit Only by Fire, about the Middle Ages. And he says, "Given the state of maps, then, it's hardly surprising that so many ships failed to return. Scientists around several tables decided the planet Pluto isn't. This is how the cosmos is nudged by naming, why maps are complicated, then discarded. It's nonsense to think of Dante nowadays and where he happened to place his hells, or how the 7 visible spheres became crowns for ancient kings. And if the Vatican is correct, the Virgin ascending at the speed of light hasn't left our galaxy yet. This is why the universe swallows both regular and immaculate conceptions and burps without saying, 'Excuse me.' Still, we look up often and constellate stars because one must constellate something, and read them like tea leaves because magnetic north, among other fixed things, is moving. Confession, I love those early maps of the unfinished, half-assed world, unknown places populated by crypto-anthropological creatures, drawn more carefully than continents, and the pirate syntax of 'here there be monsters.' Marco Polo was correct to see Chinese unicorns instead of rhinoceroses and never mention drinking tea. This is the lot of most mysteries, always pushed to our peripheries. Last week, Google reduced our hometowns to fields and streets and perfect squares. Unless we close our eyes, we can't find where we used to be anywhere."
Thanks so much. That was Erik Campbell reading the epilogue to his latest book, The Corpse Pose. Erik, thanks so much for joining me. It's just a pleasure, as I knew it would be. I think we'll have to have you on every time somebody cancels or postpones, so keep your Tuesdays free.
I wouldn't mind being the Nathan Lane, like for Letterman, right? When
Yeah. Yeah, well, you're going to do that, so I'm serious. You have to keep your Tuesday nights free from now on.
I apologize for all the exposition. Thanks to everybody who watched, and Namaste.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, talk to
All
you
right.
soon.
See ya.
Bye. Yeah, so there's Erik Campbell with his latest book, which is 2016 from Hen Press, The Corpse Pose. Hope you all enjoyed that. If you did, please let me remind you one more time to click the like button and share it if you can, if you're bold enough to do that, because that's how you tell the computers, the Google overlords, that this content is worth sharing and watching, so that all the people who might want to get to actually see it. So yeah, thanks so much. It was a great discussion, and and Todd Robbins says, "God bless Eric's hair." It's funny because the only thing he asked before he started was if his hair looked okay. Which anyway, now we're going to move on to the open mic portion of the night, and I wanted to talk to everybody. I'm wondering if we should. I'm thinking about merging the shows. We have the Poets Respond live Sunday mornings, and we have this Tuesday nights. And I was thinking about merging them into one longer show on Sunday. So let me know what you think about that. Some people have already said they'd want to do a Tuesday show. So I'll have to just ask everybody if they want to switch. Maybe we'll have like a back and forth if people like that. But I don't know how much, we gather around now 3 times a week to talk about poetry. Is that a good amount, or is that too much? My original idea for this Rattlecast was to have an hour of talk and poetry with a poet every week, and then have an hour of sort of call-in open lines. And when we started, I didn't have enough people calling in. But now we've added the phone line, so you don't have to use Skype, and we have the prompt poems, and we have Poets Respond poems. So if you moved to Sunday, we could actually have a 2-hour show where everything is sort of conjoined together. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. I'll watch the comments and see if that's something you like, or do you like it spread out like this? I don't know. The only thing about combining them is that I love how on Sunday mornings we get all the poets from India to call in, because the timing is better. So I'm not sure, but that's something I'm thinking about for the future. So let me know. Maybe I'll put a poll up on Facebook or something. But now let's move on to the open mic portion of the show. We'll get rid of Eric. Bye, Eric. And if you would like to call in, let me remind you how it's done. Why is that not working? Well, that's strange. My phone number's not popping up. It still says Erik Campbell. But the number is 818-850-7727. That's 818-850-7727. Or you could send a... I do not know why that's not showing up. Oh, I know. I made a mistake. I saved it as the wrong file. Okay. Anyway, you can also send me a chat message over Skype to Rattle Poetry, all one word. We have Richard Westheimer would like to read tonight. Definitely have Richard on. Brentopoulos, we're going to try him probably. And if you have the poem for the prompt, and let me show you what the prompt is for this week. The prompt was, here you go. Write a poem based on your most recent dream. Must not use adjectives or adverbs. And I have to admit that me and Megan both, I think, forgot about the adjectives and adverbs thing. So we actually used them. I'm sorry. But they're poems about our most recent dream. So if you have a poem about your most recent dream, bonus points for not using adjectives or adverbs. Send me a chat message to Rattle Poetry, all one word. I will call you when we get the time right. We have Dick Westheimer and Angela Gartner lined up already. You can also call that number, which once again I can't show on screen because I screwed up the file, is 818-850-7727. I'll show. Can you see my post-it note? There you go. 818-850-7727. That's the number you have to call. I can never remember it, so I have a post-it note. But if you would like to call in, please do so. Now here is first my poem. And I mentioned this before. This was literally my last dream. And it was because Sunday night, I think it was. Yeah, Sunday night. I was talking to Erik about the show, and I could not find his first book, Arguments for Stillness. I had him send me a digital file of it. And so I was looking all over my bookshelves. I have a whole bunch of shelves that way. You can't really see them, but I do. And I could not find it. And it was driving me nuts. And then I went to bed, and then I had this dream. And this is just a This is just an explanation of my dream, word for word or image for image. So here you go. Dear Erik, I'm sorry to say I dropped my signed copy of your first book in the septic tank last night. The iron lid looked in the dream like my dead grandmother's laundry chute. I don't know why I wanted to wash your words. I don't know what it means to launder a book. As I watched it slide down the long tube into that dark pit, I realized the water at the bottom was clear. I could have drank some, and I was thirsty, but I couldn't reach that far. And in the dream, I couldn't swim. In the house behind me, every pipe inside every wall was leaking. That was my prompt poem. I don't know what the heck that dream meant. If anybody wants to do some kind of Freudian analysis and figure out what all the leaking pipes and septic tanks and clear water mean, please feel free. But that is just what happened in my dream on Sunday night. I woke up and thought, what the hell? Now here's Megan's poem. And these are Megan's prompts. So she gives me a list of prompts every couple months, and then we go through them. And here's Megan's poem from the prompt. This is The Dogs. In the middle of the forest, a kennel of dogs. Small wire cages the color of rust, each containing a pair of wild eyes. When I back away, it's into a cave. A husky crashes through his cage and flies toward me, and all I can see in the darkness is soft gray light. But I feel the heat of him, his warm hunger, and then a stranger pulls the dog away and says he's just really friendly, and all at once I know what friendly means. Good intentions, sharp teeth. So that's Megan's poem for this week about her dream, which I can confirm. She told me she had this dream last night and wrote a poem about it. Now, yeah, good intentions, sharp teeth. Yeah, so true. I think we both are having some kind of issues going on. So let's see who is up next. We have Richard Westheimer would definitely like to read. Let's call him up. And I should say, if how you send me the poem so everybody can read along as you read is send it to open mic, all one word, open mic at rattle.com. Open mic at rattle.com. I will show the poem as you read. Let me log in, actually. That would be helpful. Yes, we have Alan G. Gardner. We have Richard Westheimer's poem here. Let's call up Richard right now. So it's ringing, but you can't hear. Hey, Richard, good to see you. Let me pull you in just 1 second. There you go. Hello, how you doing tonight?
Good. I loved your discussion tonight.
Yeah, that's kind of just a look. About maybe once a month, I talk to Erik on the phone about mostly about the state of poetry and about the state of the world, and so that was kind of a look in on our regular phone call discussions.
A lot of us wanted to hear about his bass.
Yeah. I didn't even know. I've known him for 15 years. I didn't know he played bass.
I wonder how it plays in his head when he's writing poems.
Yeah, that's a good question. So if we ever have him again, I'll ask him about that.
Yeah.
So you wrote a poem about your dreams. Is there anything you want to say to introduce it?
Yeah, sure. I rarely remember my dreams. I mean, as in almost not at all. But the first month or so of the pandemic shutdown, I had this recurrent dream that I was in a very public place, and like found myself in that place and was like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do? How do I get out of here?" And so I pulled that dream forward to it being the last dream I remembered rather than my last dream.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder how many people have had that dream because, the point of dreams, I guess, is to, according to psychologists, is to like rehearse potential problems before they come up. And I've had similar dreams too of being like in a mall that's like a maze. And like, how do I get out without dying of the COVID? Yeah.
Well, I haven't had it recently, maybe because I've adjusted to it. Anyway, it's sort of like melded with the current movement and moment and Black Lives Matter piece in my head as I wrote this poem without adjectives or adverbs.
Yeah, see, you know, what happened is Megan made one prompt without adjectives and adverbs and one about the dream, and I decided to merge them, but I forgot that we did. So you're much better than us, that's for sure.
Well, and I learned a lot about gerunds and where they fit in the adjective.
Yeah, that was the idea that I should have done, is, you know, try to work on that, but I didn't. Anyway, It's ready, all set whenever you're ready to go.
Okay. I dreamt I was a man the color of coffee. I sit at a table, just me, and multitudes, all without masks, none seeing the panic ping like atoms in a smasher careening off my skull, a cavity containing all my anxieties, each struck by another, agitating for me to be somewhere I can breathe. I cannot breathe, not here, not with the others, each emitting isotopes glowing with a me-seeking virus. And me, asleep. I must be, because I find my feet wrapped in sweat seeped into my dream, my heart beating in time with a wind-up monkey whose cymbals clang. Get me out, me out. I can't breathe. I can't see how to get me out, except to awaken.
Excellent poem. That was Richard Westheimer reading I dreamt I was a man the color of coffee. Yeah, the anxiety comes through there. Excellent poem, Richard. Thanks for sharing it.
Thanks. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Have a good night. Let's see. To Angela Gartner. And also, if you let's see, we got a bunch of people. Oh.
I dreamt I...
Hello, Angela. Yeah, just shut off your video if you haven't yet. I heard it for a second. You good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let me pull you in. And you have a great internet connection. Eric's was very, if you noticed, Eric's was very up and down. But you got a good, strong one. How you doing tonight, Angela? Oh, we lost your video.
Okay, hold on.
You're back.
Am I back? Okay.
You're back, yeah. So how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I'm a canceled baseball game, which was good. So
A canceled baseball game?
due to rain, yeah.
Oh, really? So they're doing baseball somewhere?
Yep, the Ohio has decided to do baseball. So my son's in a travel league, so we're doing baseball. Social distancing, of course.
How does that work? Because I coach Little League. My son's 6, and I was going to be a coach this year, and we canceled. And then they tried to restart, but couldn't get enough people willing to do it, including myself. I didn't want to do it. Because just the idea of getting 15 6 and 7-year-olds to stay apart, I don't know, how is it working okay, or is it manageable or not?
Well, my son's like I have an 11 and a 13-year-old, so they're pretty good, but I mean, we all try to social distance, and no one's wearing masks and everyone's outside, so
Yeah.
Well, it's good. Like, it's a good thing. Even though I'm so busy because I'm trying to finish grad school that like I kind of just want to go back to normal where we just staying inside so I can work.
Yeah, I can hear that. Anyway, so your poem is Blend, right? About your dream. Is there anything you want to say before you read it?
Yeah, I dream. My dreams, it's never one long dream. It's like 3 short dreams, and that's kind of why it's called Blend, because it's about the night where I usually, it's either I don't dream at all or I have 3 short dreams all through the night. So and they kind of like fade. So it's like I remember, and then like it goes to black for a while, and then it comes back. So it's really odd. So this is kind of the one I had, a couple weeks ago, and I tried the adjectives and adverbs, but I don't know.
That's see. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, here we go. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Mom and son running in a convention, cover at the door, explore, meet superhero, Comic book adventure. Laughter. Splendid. It's done. Background blends. Change direction. Home. Husband and me. Floor. Kissing. Tingles. Glee. Want this. It ends. Heartbreaks. Background blends. Change direction. Get in a van. Snow on the roads. Go to family dinner. No steak to order. Sit at a table. We empty our plates. Background blends. Change direction. Fade in REM.
Yeah, that is a very dreamlike poem. Yeah, flitting between things. Thanks so much, Angela, for sharing that.
Thank you. You have a great night.
You too. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, we got a bunch of people calling on the phone too. Brentopolis, we're joining him on Skype. Let's do... That's strange. I saw a couple people calling, but only one's listed. Hopefully... But let's do a 207 number and see who this is. I'm guessing it might be Daniel Mask. Or maybe Bill Ratner. Let's see.
This is David.
David. Who am I talking to? This is Tim with Rattle.
David Leo Siwa.
Good to join us. Do you want to share a poem for the open mic?
I would so love to. Just a one-pager.
Do you know where... Did you send it to me? Let's see, David.
Through email or how? I'm just calling and I don't have Skype.
Yeah. Did you send it to me over email at openmic@rattle.com?
No, I didn't. I didn't know about that.
Do you want to do that? And then I'll call you back after I call the next person so people could read along?
Yeah.
Sure.
Openmic@rattle.com?
Yeah, openmic@rattle.com. Just send it over that way,
Perfect.
and then people can read along, which is just improves the experience. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Lovely.
I'll call you right back.
Thanks a million. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Okay, let's do down to Brentopolis, who is actually, where'd it go? Brent Stauffer. Let's do Brent Stauffer. So the phone is ringing. Hello, Brent. Are you here?
Hello.
I hear you. I don't see you yet. If you want to click on your camera button.
Okay. Matt, how are we doing now?
There you are. Hello. How are you doing tonight?
Okay, good. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah. It's a fun night. I had a good time on this show so far. So you have
me too.
You have a dream poem too. Is there anything you want to say to introduce it?
Just that I was watching Fellini's 8.5.
Mm-hmm.
Fell asleep near the end. Woke up a couple hours later, watched the end of it, then fell asleep, had this dream, and woke up and started scribbling notes.
Very nice, yeah. I haven't watched that in so long. Yeah, now I want to rewatch it.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
And the other thing is, it was incredibly hard to not use any adjectives or adverbs.
Yeah.
There's so many words that are adjectives that you don't think about until you start trying to prune them away. But anyway, it's kind of long, so I'll try to...
Yeah, go ahead.
Dream after Philly. We were racing toward the gig. I was driving for some reason. The Bug, crammed to the gills with a band called Entropy, the amps and guitars and drums, plus a collection of elbows and knees, buzzed the alleys of Woodlawn as we descended into Avondale. Turning right between Munchies and Saturn, the bar, not the planet, a mouth to hell opened up into the street, screaming and spitting asphalt. That crater was the size of a Studebaker, then the size of an auto dealership. The Bug's tires teetered on its lip as the car leaned in toward the maw. Inside that gullet, as it grew, swirled circles of boulders. Rings of rocks ground into each other. Sparks and flames leapt and rioted. The Bug clung to what street was left. My hands latched onto the wheel like death. A thought flew up from the gut. What if I steered us into it? The chaos of cries and shouts faded as fear gripped my soul. In a flash, I could kill us all. Panic twisted my tongue into a root. I was stricken with guilt while pandemonium raged. I slowed us to a crawl, inching along the edge as it seethed and buckled. The drummer screamed, "Get us the fuck out of here!" The steering wheel shook and kicked. There was no way to tell them. Did I want to die? Did I yearn to be dead? The bed, though, held me like a hand. How did I get here? You've awakened, chortled the coat and stethoscope. The band circled around and muttered spells of healing and remembering. Son, the doctor's beard intoned. It wasn't self-interest that terrified, but love and fear for your friends. You didn't kill anyone. You are forgiven. These words struck me like a revelation, and I began to float, leaving the gown behind like a skin, then hover above the bed, then soar through the corridors past rooms of the sick and wounded. A soldier looked up from his wheelchair. He tapped his chest, smiled, and nodded. I was flying past a pair of eyeglasses when an arm reached out from underneath them, grabbed my wrist. I recognized my first psychiatrist. You don't deserve this, he cried, before shoving a COVID-19 swab up my nostril, into the brain, into some folds and crevasses where it tickled and caressed, smoothing out some of the matter. Thanks, I said. I feel much better. On and on my body sailed until I emerged from the hospital and onto a plain or field where a rocket ship stood in its scaffolding. The silver shone. My suit was made of linen. My sunglasses were Italian. Cameras lurked everywhere as cameramen lounged on them, smoking cigarettes. Extras mixed in the twilight. A band of clowns marched by. Marcello Mastroianni appeared out of a flurry of women, taking my elbow and presenting the horizon with a sweep of his hand. You did good, he said, but we've had to stop production. We're unhooking the sun now. You should have a glass of wine. Enjoy this. The end. Evening grew up from the ground, then settled back down again. We sat together as the sky was dismantled. The sound of glasses clinking rose from the table.
That was so fun. Thanks so much for sharing that. And
thanks.
It was Brent Stauffer. Reminds me of reading Bob Dylan's 149th Dream or whatever that poem is.
Oh, is that when he lights that match on the parking meter?
Yeah, exactly. Just goes on and on and on. Yeah, that's really fun. It's fun to hear people's dreams. Actually, I like this a lot. This is my favorite prompt maybe so far. It's fun hearing what you guys are dreaming about. I had
interesting.
Yeah,
so long.
Yeah. I don't have dreams that long. I actually I decided if everybody goes to my Twitter feed, it's like @TimothyGreen, which I never use. But I was trying to tweet my dreams and like just condense everything, because I heard somebody said that if you write down your dream right when you wake up, you'll remember more. And I realized that it didn't work. Like, I just dream about playing baseball. That's basically all I do. I play baseball like every night. And they didn't get any more vivid. I didn't remember anymore, so I kind of stopped doing that. And I don't use Twitter at all anymore. But it is cool here, and I wish I had dreams as vivid as everybody here, especially yours. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very, when I told my therapist about it, and I said I had a humdinger. She was like, "Yeah, I think you did."
You definitely did. Yeah, I want to listen back to that all and get it all again. That was cool, and thanks so much for sharing that.
All right, thanks a lot.
Yeah, have a good one.
Bye.
Let's see. Who do we have? We have. Let's get back. Did he get? Well, Michelle Parks is here. Here's David. Yeah, let's call back David. So I have some more dreams from Daniel Mask and Michelle Parks, but you haven't sent me a...
David?
Hey, David, it's Tim. Let me pull you in.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, and I have your poem right here. David Leo Sirios. How do you say that?
Yeah.
Sirois?
Sirois.
Sirois.
It's French, Sirois. Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. And so your poem is... still a meditation on meditation. Is there anything you want to say about it before we start?
No, I just want to read the... Well, I wrote it after reading a whole bunch of Beckett's short prose.
Very cool. Cool. Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, thank you. Still, a meditation on meditation. The dead can do it. From them I learned to be still and quiet. Still, my thoughts are loud. Still, I murmur in images. Still, there are minuscule movements I can't control when I sit still. Gentle tremble of hands, eyes, lips, and the mind's blizzard of pointed letters. In a not quite forgotten full lotus pose ritual, I begin to fill my body with an expanding soul steeped in the spirit of the whole universe's blue lotus. One turning. Night unfolds the contours of her charcoal velvet blanket, and I sense my red magnetic spirit drawn toward you more than beforehand. Another movement I cannot control. My empty palms reach for the circle of light you wear around your dancer's figure across the border river. Echoes of your evening teachings, lightning on my inner night's horizon. Electric charges surge through your form, flicker in your liberated laughter, and gentle maple sugar tones to flash truths before my heart's eye. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word is with you still.
Very nice. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I love that. These are a lot of fun. This is definitely my favorite prompt. That was David Leo Sirio, or Soroy, with Still, a meditation on a meditation. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing that, David.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
I'll keep watching.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so we have Michelle Parks and Caitlin Bucksbaum. Let's do those last two, and then we'll call it a night. Here's Caitlin. Give her a call up. Let's see.
Hi, sorry.
Hey, no problem at all. Here you are. How you doing tonight, Caitlin? Good to see you.
Pretty good. It's weird. Hold on one second.
Yeah, no problem. I had to find your poem anyway. Was it Dune?
Yes,
Okay.
and I was just telling my husband to mute himself because he's playing video games right across from me.
Okay.
But yeah, super weird. 10 or 15 minutes ago, I was like, what's that sound? And I looked out the window, and it's just this huge downpour, like the most rain we've had in a long time. And it only lasted like 2 minutes.
Oh, man.
And so I'm just like, what is happening?
Yeah, I'm jealous. We, in Southern California, it rains like in April, and then it never rains again until October, and we're all on fire. So,
Oof.
I mean, occasionally we get a thunderstorm from the monsoon, but we haven't gotten one yet. And I would love a nice rainstorm. It would be nice. We had the pollen everywhere. So I'm jealous.
Yeah, I thought we were going to have a bad summer for fires because we had a few in early May, and it hadn't rained a lot.
Mhm.
But this has actually been a very normal summer.
Yeah.
Like,
That's good. That's good.
most days are like 65 degrees. So, pretty chill.
So is there anything you want to say about your poem before you read it? Dune? Is it the Herbert Dune?
No, just literally it's about sand dunes.
Interesting. Okay.
Is because which you might not get from the way I wrote it. I think you might just think it's like a dusty hill. But I actually do. I try to write down my dreams every time I have them, and I there are times where it seems like I'll go months without really thinking about it or having one, and sometimes I'll just have super vivid ones. I mean, there are dreams that I remember from when I was a kid, and yeah. So anyway, this one was one I wrote down some notes as soon as I woke up and wrote the poem later, and it's pretty accurate to like everything. I mean, there's italicized parts that are like thoughts, and actually like had these thoughts either in the dream or as soon as I woke up. So yeah, kind of I'll just leave it at that, I think, and let people read into it.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, Dune. We had been hiking, but now it was a climb, the difficulty of which did not deter us. We felt the heat, the dust on our faces, sweat trickling into our smiles, like the time we traveled by ourselves. As we near the zenith, a boy approaches on a dirt bike, asks for our code names. I say, we don't have code names. Like I told that toddler we were not who she thought we were. Only this time, it is a we sisters share over friends. The boy disappears. We complete our ascent and meet a woman standing on the ridge, dressed in layers, as if she is a jogger, as if she doesn't feel the sun, as if she'll never melt the way we do. I think she is my mother, but she is black. Her box braids, accented with gold, extend below her waist, and if I were not dreaming, I might have stared, in awe at her beauty. Instead, I watch her eyebrows raise, and I know she is thinking we complicated our journey. But her pride seeps out beneath her skepticism, as if to say, thank God you finally arrived.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that. Then that was Caitlin Bucksbaum, of course, reading Dune, Dreamscape. And I love that too. It's so cool it occurs to me now, maybe what we really want with poetry is just to hear each other's dreams. Like maybe that's all poetry is.
Yeah,
it is,
right?
unfiltered. Hearing other people's dreams is really fun. Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Caitlin. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, have a good night.
You too.
Okay, let's do, we'll do one last call, and we'll do Michelle Parks. Did she send that? Let me make sure she sent that. She did. Yeah. Okay. Let me call up Michelle. And it is late tonight, but I try to end these at 7:30 my time, so we're 18 minutes past due, but this is too fun. Michelle, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello,
How are you?
Good to see you. How are you? Let me pull you over so everyone else can see you too. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm having a nice night tonight. So you have. Do you want to do the dream one? You sent a poet respond thing too.
I accidentally did that. That was
Okay.
the one that I sent last week, and instead of being all smart and typing in openmic@rattle.com, I just forwarded my new poem, not realizing it would show up on the bottom.
Okay.
So I kind of hate to end with this poem because it was really hard for me to write, even though it's so short.
Mm-hmm.
And you may want to play like the Mr. Rogers intro after or something, just, as a soul cleanser. Because I wrote this poem. I was a general manager in hotels for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
Once, and only once, luckily for me, I had to go in at like 6 a.m. because a guy's wife had been calling him and he wasn't answering. And that was very odd because he had been with us for like 6 months on a training project, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his wife called him every morning and he always answered. So when she called him repeatedly and he didn't answer, my auditor went up and knocked on the door. No answer. She tried to open the door, but it was locked with the deadlock and the latch part. Well, so she called me because she was worried.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ever need to know how to break into anywhere, call a hotel manager because
you can break into anything, yeah.
Very true. One of the fun lessons on the job, anyway. But I break into his room, which means I have to undo the deadbolt and I have to flip the latch with this little screwy thing I got. And I walk in the room and I don't see him. And I'm thinking maybe he fell off the bed. And so I walk around the bed and I don't see him on the floor. And so I start to walk out. And as I'm walking out, the closet door was open. And on the inside of the closet door is a mirror. And in my head, I'm thinking, how would he have fallen off the bed? How could anything be wrong here?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong here. There is absolutely 100% nothing at all wrong here. But I didn't see him when I walked into the room, and he wasn't on the floor. And I broke into the room, so he had to be in there. And as I was walking past the closet door, the mirror there, I saw the image of him. And trigger warning. I should have trigger warning long before this. Sorry, that's totally
okay.
my.
That's okay.
He had suffered from autoerotic asphyxiation.
Oh, mm-hmm.
And so I wrote this poem, and again, please share Skittles with the class afterwards.
Okay.
It's called Cold Storage. Was it self-taught loathing, on knees, buckled, broken? I find you in a closet, still. In my dreams, the door's unopened.
Wow. Wow, what a story. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that. And that comes back to you in dreams?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's part of the
Yeah.
whole PTSD life, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
You get all kinds of giggles.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have some too from working as a group home counselor, but back before I had this job. But yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Michelle. That was a powerful little poem.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm sorry it was so sad.
No, it's okay. Thank you.
All right, you have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
And it was Michelle Parks reading her Cold Storage poem. Okay. Now, let's see. I have to find this again. But next week's prompt, because I got to get the kids to bed. But let me find next week's prompt for y'all. That's right. This will be an easy one. So here you go. This is next week's prompt. And that's not it. That's it. Next week's prompt, 3-minute poem. Set a timer for 3 minutes and write until your 3 minutes is up. No editing afterward. You have 3 minutes to write a poem. And we'll see how cool people can make poems in 3 minutes. We had an issue back, Rattle number 19 is a tribute to the 20-minute poem, which is a workshop that the former Tim Green, Stella Sue Lee, used to do 20-minute poem workshops. And but this is 3 minutes. So we'll see what you can come up with in 3 minutes. I'm looking forward to that because I write these poems like the half an hour before the show starts. So I'm looking forward to only having to spend 3 minutes next week. But that is next week's prompt. I'll show it again one more time. That is the 3-minute poem. Set a timer for 3 minutes and write until your 3 minutes is up. No editing afterward. So good luck with that. Now, on next week's Rattlecast, we are going to have Ron Kirchie. Rattlecast number 47. That's Tuesday, June 30th. And his newest book is Yellow Moving Van. But Ron Kirchie is one of the most fun poets that I know. He's also a young adult author. So he has books for teenagers and makes his money that way. Also, he was a professor at a college for a long time, actually. But his most recent book of poems is Yellow Moving Van. And he's just one of the most fun poets that I know. So looking forward to his show. It's June 30th, next Tuesday, and 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Rattlecast number 47. I will see you then. Have a great night. Hope you enjoyed the show, and do click the like button if you're still watching and enjoyed it. Have a good night. Bye.